Hello and welcome to this week's Robin Pod, which is of course powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre, the only car specialist trusted by the players, officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. Joining me on this week's Robin Pod is former Hull KR player and host of the Out of Air League podcast, Stacey Mowforth, as she joins me to discuss her time with the Robins and women's rugby league in general. Before we hear from Stacey, though, I caught with Robin Pod regular Scott Solway to review the Robins' defeat to the Leeds Rhinos and look forward to Rovers' Super League Round 1 fixture against that lot at Hull City's Stadium. Scott, it's great to have you back on the Robin Pod, the first time in 2024. We've had a bit of a lull in rugby league in the winter months. We've had a couple of pre-season friendlies. We've had the starter. I think we're all ready for the main course now. Out with Scott. How are you doing? And welcome back to the Robin Pod.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me back again. Always a pleasure to help you out and have talk everything Hull KR. So thanks for having me back. Yeah, not bad. Just as you just said there, getting ready for it now. We've had the two friendlies, haven't we? I thought the young lads did really well against Sheffield, had a good hit out, and then Sunday was a necessary means to an end, I guess. But we've got some minutes into the legs of the key players, and I think everybody's just set up for next Thursday now, aren't we, against that lot? So yeah, ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about the Leeds game very shortly. What have you made of pre-season so far? It seems to have been a bit of a quiet pre-season, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, is it? It's hard to read so much into things as well because it is all about what happens from round one. The team, the club seem to be quietly going about the business and there don't seem to be any wild claims or any disruption. It seems to be ticking along quite nicely.
Yeah, no shouts from the rooftops at all, is there? To be honest with you, regards information, it's only what we pick up on social media and through the club channels and, through Hull Live and the bits that they do. But the club just seems to be getting on with the pre-season. Everybody, from what you've seen, all the players seem to be enjoying it. It seems like the week in Tenerife was highly successful again in that warm weather training camp. But as I say, no shouting from rooftops, is there? It's just a case of let's get on with it. Let's go and do the business. Let's just play rugby and see where we end up come the end of the season. And I think that's all they can do. If you start making wild claims and we're going to do this, we're going to do that, it comes and bites you on the backside, doesn't it? So it's a good thing to keep under the radar, really. Yeah,
the players came back a little bit later for pre-season this season. A couple, I think Michael Lewis, Tyrone May, they came back even later. I'd love to know what Willie Peters learned from his first pre-season with the Robins and what he's changed this time around and why he might have made them changes. As we go into the first game of the season on Thursday, it would be very interesting to see if there was any changes, what he's learned. I mean, I don't know if he was at that game, Scott, that 28-0 defeat to Featherstone. I mean,
yeah,
it seems a lifetime ago. Result, that feels like 2 lifetimes ago. I mean, but again, it just shows you really how you cannot read so much into results on the field in pre-season games, albeit they're a necessary evil, but the result is largely irrelevant unless you have got Hull FC fans in your family or your friends, and then the scoreline of their pre-season friendly because they're important for winding people up.
It does, but I'm also in a position as well, I think, where just because they've lost 40-0 in a friendly, as much as a good laugh it is to us, I'm not reading anything to that either. Yeah. You just can't. Come next Thursday, a clean sheet, a clean slate for everybody. Now the club's in any sort of form whatsoever. It's a fresh start for both clubs. We could go there and win easily, but we could easily get turned over as well. You just never ever know what a derby's going to bring. So I don't look into our results, and I don't look into the fact that they lost 40-0. I really don't. Next Thursday is when it all starts. I don't know what. The only thing I will say is that I guess a 28-16 hit out. Maybe Willie Peters can take more from that than maybe Tony Smith kind of a 40-0 defeat. I don't know. I mean, I know they were with Wigan, weren't they, for the first half? It was only 6-0 at half-time, wasn't it? And the second half, they got blown away. That was very much like us, really, in the Leeds game. We were up first half, and then they did a second half. So not reading too much into pre-season results, really.
Yeah, and there'll be a much deeper preview of the first game of the season on next week's Robin Pod. So make sure you tune into that one as we go into depth for that first round game, first round hit out. Bringing it back to Sunday, Scott, 26 points at 18 defeat to Leeds Rhinos, a much changed lineup from the Sheffield Eagles, of course. The Sheffield Eagles game, of course, we saw a number of youngsters and academy players with a smattering of first teamers line up against the Eagles. This was a much changed lineup and gave us our biggest clue yet as to what that starting lineup might look like for that first game of the season. We started off with 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗴𝗏 at fullback, with 𝗬𝗆𝘆 on the wing, 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗃 inside of him, 𝗀𝗽𝗲𝗏𝗏 the other centre, and Ryan Hall on the wing. Tyrone May featured. He partnered Mikey Lewis in the halves. Dean Hadley started at prop with Rhys Butterworth at hooker, Jarrod Whitbread the other prop, Corey Hall lining up once again at second row with James Batchelor and Elliot Minchella at loose forward. Strong lineup. The only players, academy players, who came through to line up on the bench on Sunday was Fishwick, Gorman and Tennyson. Missing 𝗤𝗏𝗏, Burgess and Parcell. I think Parcell, his partner was pregnant, so I think he was in the midst of all that. 𝗤𝗏𝗏, hamstring injury, which kept him out of that game. And Joe Burgess, I think he picked up a little knock. And of course, he missed a month of pre-season in between departing his suspension from Salford and then finally signing for the Robins. So understandably not featuring against Leeds. I mean, it was a strong lineup, wasn't it, Scott? And it does give us our biggest clue to who will probably lining up against Hull FC in that round one fixture. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, apart from, if he quite fancies Corey Hall as a second row now, I think, doesn't he? He must have done something in the Sheffield game to play there again. I know we're without 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏, and I think 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏 is shooing once he's fit, to be honest with you, on that side in the second row. Hiku started at fullback and he finished at fullback, I think, as well. I know there was a switch around first half, wasn't there? Evells went to fullback, Hiku went to centre, and 𝗦𝗢𝗄𝗏𝗁𝗃 went onto the wing for a short period of time. But I think Hiku's going to be the starting fullback without a doubt. And I think what you saw on Sunday, apart from 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Parcell maybe slotting in there, is probably your starting 13, maybe. Hadley at prop as a starter, maybe. I don't know. I know Willie Peters thinks highly of Dino, doesn't he? But whether somebody else starts in the prop forward position ahead of Dino, I don't know. But Dino, I think, will certainly make the 17. He'll be on the bench, worst case scenario, won't he? So obviously we're still without Sam Luckley as well. I think Sam would probably be a bit of a shoe-in somewhere in there as well, certainly in the 17. And of course, Parcell and Jez would spell the hooking role between them. So I think what we saw on Sunday was predominantly, give or take, one or two positional changes and a couple of starting positions who didn't play on Sunday. That was your starting 13, really, to a certain extent, I think.
Yeah, and on Hadley, Peters has mentioned how fond he is of him at prop, and then I think he likes him there. I think that's the position that he wants him to play. And I think that's probably part of the reason why Corey Hall's been experimented with in the second row, is to give us that option just in case. I mean, I'd be very surprised, especially for round one, whether, to see Corey Hall lining up in the second row. Peters has already said about 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏. I've got a quote from him here. 𝗀𝗃𝗃 is on track for round one and he'll be our back rower. I'll give you that. We've signed 𝗀𝗃𝗃 for round one, and he was training really well. He had a little minor setback, but he's on track to play. So he's pretty much, unless anything changes between now and next Thursday, you'd imagine he'll be lining up there. But Willie Peters has spoke about during pre-season about giving players the opportunity to play different positions, because of the course of a long old season like we know it is, Scott. There is times when players do have to play out a position within a game or as a result of injuries, going forward.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think if he's testing Corey Hall in that second row position, if you have got a couple of injuries as the season progresses on, I think Corey could probably step in there. I don't think he isn't a natural second row, is he? But you could argue it's only one position in from his natural position, the centre. I don't know whether Corey's bulked up a bit or what. It doesn't seem as though he hasn't. But, he carries well. He takes the ball. I mean, my only little downfall of him is that he just tends to go sideways quite a lot. But I guess that's what centres sometimes do as well. Into they come in field and they go looking for the gaps. He might have to learn how to play second row perhaps a bit more. But I think worst case scenario, if you've got a few injuries, he'll never let you down. You know, if you have to play him there, I don't think he'll let you down, 𝗀𝗂𝗽𝗏𝗏. But I don't think he's a natural second row by any means. But it's worth testing him out there, isn't it? I guess, you know. So, but I agree with what you said about Dino as well. He does like him, and Willie does like him at prop. And if he needs to play Dino at prop, then it can turn to 𝗂𝗲𝗏𝗏 if need be to play in the second row. Should be any injuries that catch up with us.
Yeah, we've already mentioned 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗏𝗏. First try of the game. I actually missed it. I was too busy pissing about sorting tickets out in the ticket office. So I literally walked into Headingley just as he'd gone over for the try. Of course, I watched the highlights, and it was a lovely glide, wasn't it? That step back inside and to go under the post and to go in so early. And if you look at 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗏𝗏's performance over the full game, Scott, I think he was probably the standout player from the game as a whole. Like you said, he did change position during the game. He was the kicker as well, apart from the final one, what Gorman took. But he did look a very classy player. He looked to have a bit of footwork, and he was always looking for the offload once they'd made contact, and he seemed to be able to get his arm away on quite a few occasions. So he's a really exciting prospect for me going into the new season.
Yeah, totally agree with what you just said about his step as well. Every time he took the ball in, his step was superb, and he flummoxed Leeds on a number of occasions just with his simple step. He's clearly a very talented footballer, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, I know he's not played that much fullback in his career. He's done a little bit here and there. He's predominantly been a centre, but that's why I think he switched Devils there and put 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗏𝗏 in the centres just to have a look. But I know he's been signed as a fullback as 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗏𝗏. I think he's come over on the understanding that he's going to be our #1 fullback. And he carries the ball well, as I say. His step's fantastic. He's got a good offload, and he's strong. He's not that big a fella, but he's strong, isn't he? You know, but when he went into contact a few times, he was carrying a couple of players along with him for an extra couple of yards. So it looks like he's a strong kid. You know, good power in his legs and his upper body, good offload, great step. So it'd be nice to see him on a dry track. You know, when the better weather comes and the pitches dry out and we haven't got that wind that was blowing at Headingley on Sunday, I think we'll really see the best of 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗏𝗏, I think, when the dry tracks come.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the conditions on Sunday were pretty testing, weren't they? It wasn't the best weather for Champagne Rugby League. That said, I think both teams did contribute to an interesting spectacle. And what really surprised me, Scott, was the intensity, the level of aggression. There was a couple of times, weren't they, where players were scuffling. I think Lytton and O'Connor in back play in the second half in the first half, sorry, they seemed to be having a bit of a go at each other. And it was, considering it was a pre-season hit out, I thought there was a decent level of performance and decent level of aggression and intensity. And I think you're right, Willie Peters will take a lot out of the game. That said, as a performance as a whole, Scott, it was a bit rusty. You know, you saw a few passes go astray where if they'd connected, it could have been a score for the Robins. And ultimately, though, that's what these games are for. And I'd rather see the players trying things and them not come off than not see anything like that in the first place.
Yeah, I think in the first half, I think we won it 12-4, didn't we, the first half?
Yeah.
But we had a lot of ball on Leeds' line and never really converted it to any chances. Ryan Hall spilled a couple of balls, albeit they were the greatest balls to him. I don't think I've ever seen Ryan drop the ball so much in one game as he did on Sunday. But we had a lot of ball on Leeds' line and only came away with 12 points. Even when they were down to 12 men and they had Sangari sent off for that 10 minutes, we couldn't get over the line again. Whereas in the second half, with the wind behind Leeds' backs, they came away with 22 points to our 6. So they tend to convert. They converted more chances than we did. I thought it was a very similar game. We had most of the possession, I think, first half. Leeds had a lot of it second half with the wind at the backs, and they just converted more chances than we did. But as you say, it's easier to see any mistakes that we're making because they can be ironed out. That's what friendlies are for. That's why these games, that's what we're playing. You know, and other times, some of them passes that just went slightly astray will come off and will be over the try line in league matches. You know, so it's nice to see that they're trying things. I mean, you don't want to show your hand either, do you? We'll play Leeds again in 2 weeks, so you're not going to be showing your hand in regards, you know, what we've got and what we've worked on. But it was a good effort. It was a decent game, you know, 28-16, as well as Rovers. I think Leeds will have learned a lot about it as well. And let's be honest, they're going to be a lot stronger this year, Leeds, than they were last year. they've put a good side together down at Headingley, and they're certainly not going to be languishing. I don't think where they finished last year. They're going to be up there challenging for the top 4. So it was a good hit out for Leeds and a good hit out for Rovers, without a doubt.
Yeah, I think, like you just said there, Leeds are probably going to be a different proposition this season, and Brodie Croft and Andy Ackers are going to be absolutely key to that. They seem to play very well, especially Brodie Croft. He got his try on Sunday. Another player who got a try was Jai Whitbread. I said 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 was probably the standout player of overall in the game. For me, Jai Whitbread was the best performing forward on Sunday. It was he's mobile. He's got a bit of punch in him. He's got minutes. You know, he's got a big engine. So I think he's going to be crucial to the Robins next season. And Willie Peters likes these types of forwards. It's becoming more and more evident that he wants these players who can do big minutes and ones that he can trust as well. And I think Jai Whitbread is that player.
Yeah, of course. I think he did big minutes for Wakey as well when he was there the last couple of seasons as well. When he played, he knows you're going to get a lot out of him. You know, in a work all day. I mean, the try he scored was, you could argue it was a bad job, really, but it was a good try. He still had to get over the line and get the ball down. So I don't think he's the biggest of kids, is he? He's not that big. You wouldn't say he's a huge guy, but he's certainly, you know, got a lot of, again, his leg power and his upper body power is quite extensive. He carried the ball well. He goes into contact well. He tends to win the battle on the floor as well. He gets good play the ball away. And the most important thing is, you just said there, Willie likes players, certainly forwards, who can do big minutes, and Jai Whitbread can certainly do that. And that means that you can get a little bit less maybe out of somebody else. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. But you know, if Jai Whitbread's putting the minutes in, you know that George King will do long stints for you. But maybe perhaps Jessie Sue maybe wouldn't do as long a stint. But if you've got people like Luckley, Whitbread, Georgie King putting those long minutes in, it means that you can have other players to come off the bench impactive to do shorter stints, and I think it works perfect that.
Yeah, and Jessie Sue, I mean, he's one of the players who's supposed to have performed really well in pre-season in terms of the intensity and the work rate he's shown. We saw him for the first time in 2024 out on the pitch on Sunday. He was spelled just before and just after half-time. And Jez Litton, another player who had suffered an injury in pre-season, he made his way back out onto the pitch. Reece Butterworth starting in the hooker role, but Jez Litton coming on. And what do you make of the fact, Scott, that Jez Litton seems to have been handed that starting hooker spot? Willie Peters said there's no secret there. He's got the 9 jersey for a reason. He's not a young pup anymore. Me and Matty have had some conversations. He knows exactly where he's at and where Jez is at. He's still going to be very important to us in reference to 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, but we need to progress, and Jez needs to own that hooking role. It's important he goes after it. So you'd assume, Scott, it's Litton's to lose, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And as you say, he's been given the 9 jersey for a reason. Willie Peters is right. You know, Jez Litton's not a kid anymore. I'm not sure how old he is exactly, but he's not in the realms of 20, 21, 22, is he? You know, he's got the experience now. He's played a fair few games in Super League, and if he wants to make the hooking role his share, as you say, it's his to lose. But having Matty to come off the bench and all that experience that Parcell's got is fantastic. You know, we've got 2, and we'll Reece Butterworth as well. We've got 3 really good hookers at the club. I think Jez only came on as early as he did on Sunday because I think Reece had to go for a head test, didn't he? And I'm presuming that he failed it because he didn't come back on. Hence Jez, I think Jez was only meant to do 40 minutes on Sunday, but he ended up doing 60, I think, non-stop. So whether that's got some more effort into his legs, I don't know. But Jez is certainly a good hooker. He's a good lad. He's a good player. And he can only even continue learning off people like Matt Parcell as well. You know, and I'm sure Matt Parcell, what is he, 31, 32? He's not at the very, very end of his career, although he might choose to retire perhaps at the end of this season, I don't know. But to have somebody like Matt Parcell coming off the bench and all that experience, well, that's a fantastic position to be in. Jez can run teams ragged for the first 30, 40 minutes, and then you bring Parcell on to have a go. It's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, we've got 2 great hookers.
Jez Litton, he's 25 years old, and Matt Parcell, he's out of contract, of course, at the end of the season. He'll be 31 by the time he reaches the end of his contract. There was a few rumours flying around whether he was heading back to the NRL or whether he was going to be quitting the game, because I'm sure he's doing. he's some educate qualified in some things. An industry away from rugby league where he could fall back on. So it may be this continuation planning where we have a full season of Jez as the #1 hooker, 𝗦𝗢𝗡𝗴𝗏 in that supporting role, with a view to 𝗦𝗢𝗡𝗴𝗏 probably not being around at Hull Kingston Rovers come 2025, which then obviously throws the spotlight on Rhys Butterworth, whether he's going to be the backup player. He did fail his HIA assessment, Scott, so he's missing for the derby. Whether he would have been in contention for that or not is a different matter. It looks like, though, the fact Butterworth won't be playing pushes Lytton and 𝗬𝗂𝗡𝗴𝗏 into them hooker roles for the derby. I know there was a little bit of doubt whether Jez Lytton would be ready, because of course the nursing him back to full fitness after he's had that shoulder injury. To me, it looks like he's going to be at least in the squad, probably starting as well. And he's at an age where he reminds me a little bit about Josh Hodgson, how he was at similar age, and once he got that starting hooker role, he never looked back. It seems to lift him, give him that confidence, that authority almost, where you don't necessarily got it all right, foggy.
You're right.
Yeah, I'm back. God, I bet, Scott, in your line of work, that's your worst nightmare.
Oh, nightmare when that happens. Yeah, you try and avoid it at all costs. I've water ready.
Yeah. So I was saying, but that supporting role doesn't always give you the authority that you need in a team, and now he's got the opportunity to lead the boys round, and he does look like a senior player, the way he conducts himself on the pitch, the way the players follow. And for me, he's primed for a fantastic 2025, especially when he had the international carrot dangled in front of him last season. So he's got a hell of a lot to play for.
I think what Willie Peters says about Jez as well is that not only is he a good player and he does everything right on the training field and on the field, he's a good person as well. He's a good lad. He's good around the dressing room. Everything that he is, other players, I think I've heard Willie say, other players need to look up to Jez, because even though he's still only 25, he's probably got a much older head on his shoulders than 25 suggests. And from what I've heard, he's brilliant around the dressing room. He's a leader. He carries players, if he needs to. And you can't ask for any more than that. And I think that's probably why Willie said, look, you're the number 9, you're the starting hooker. As you just said, it's his to lose, but we're matter things. But Jez, right, he really has to, it's not already step, but he has to probably go that extra notch now, that next level, to make sure that he's our #1 hooker, maybe for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Who knows?
Yeah, fingers crossed for that. Fingers crossed. And we've already said you can't take too much away from pre-season friendlies. I suppose in terms of any negative aspects about the performance, it was that roll on that Leeds got in the second half, where we didn't seem able to come up with any answers to the questions that they were posing, and 4 unanswered tries what Leeds ran in was, I suppose, the worrying part of the performance, the way that we let Leeds get a roll on. And albeit it was at a time when there was interchanges being made, we started to look a little bit clunky. Players were looking a little bit tired, but it is a worry that Leeds managed to roll us over quite easily in that second half.
I think apart from the Brodie Croft try as well, which was, I think he scored from just inside our half, didn't he, when he went and scored there. A lot of the tries were sort of like Leeds pressure on our try line as well. And I think what we prided ourselves on last year was our goal line defence. Now, I'm not taking anything away from a friendly, but our goal line defence seemed a little bit dodgy in the second half at Leeds. I say it reminded me of Rovers maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where as soon as a team got back-to-back sets, we seemed to concede a try, and we didn't have that last year. We was able to defend out 18, 24 tackles in our line on regular occurrences last year, but Leeds seemed to get over our try line a little bit too easy on Sunday. Again, not looking too much into it. It's something that can be rectified and repaired in training and on the training ground, I'm sure. But it was a bit of a concern the way they scored those 4 tries in such a short space of time as well. I think it was 4 tries. It was in about 15 minutes or something like that, 20 minutes or something. So, yeah, bit concerning there. But that apart, as I say, I thought it was a decent help for us. I thought we did okay. That just our goal line defence, and as I say, big comfortable ball in our own, with our ball in hand.
Yeah, and for Willie Peters, it's evidence of where maybe improvements need to be made, where some extra work needs to be done on the training pitch, and you know, the positive side of that is that they've got time to do that. And I wonder if Willie Peters has looked at the season and maybe compared it to last season and almost, of course, we want to hit the ground running, but maybe just took a longer term view of the season, which is why maybe the players came back a little bit later in pre-season. They haven't had as long as in pre-season training as they did last season. And I think there is a rustiness about the side. You saw that with some of the players Mikey Lewis and Tyrone May, you know, made, and you know, but like I said before, the good thing is that the intentions are there, and they're trying these things. Now, defence, yeah, there's a bit to work on. Partnerships have been newly created. You know, we had a few players out of position in that second half, but it allows Willie Peters to say, "Hey, boys, you need to up your performances, especially to individuals who might be at threat in terms of their position in the team." So, you know, like we said, it's going to be interesting to see what that first lineup is for the first game of the season. Is there anyone, I suppose, when you look at the lineup potentially for that game, Scott, other than what's maybe already predicted, I don't think there'll be any real surprises based on what we've seen in pre-season.
I don't think there'll be any shocks at all. Apart to say, Tkangano will come into the second row. Joe Burgess, I don't think he'll be not ready anyway. He's still probably a month away anyway, isn't he? So I don't think he'll be considered regardless. Sam Luckley, we already know is not going to be there. So I think what we saw at Leeds on Sunday will be the starting 13. Tkangano will come in to the second row. Parcell will probably come onto the bench as one of the four. But I think what we saw is predominantly your starting lineup near enough, I think. I think it's got a good balance to it as well. You know, it has got a decent balance. Two good second rows in Tkangano and, of course, 𝗫𝗓𝗏. I thought 𝗫𝗓𝗏 was quite quiet on Sunday, actually. Yeah. He went under the radar a little bit, did his job, but, you know, I didn't even realise he was playing. But sometimes you get them games, don't you, where you think, oh, I didn't realise he was playing. But he just did his job, didn't he, 𝗫𝗓𝗏, as he always does. So I think, you know, I think what we saw on Sunday, that'll be our starting lineup, give or take. Maybe one or two little positions in regards what might come onto the bench. I don't think anybody sticks a real claim to be, I've made it to the bench. You know what I mean? I don't think we're going to see like a Zach Fishwick or a Leo Tennyson or anything like that on the bench. I think it's going to be senior pros, certainly, until we need those lads.
Yeah, and you just mentioned some of the players who have come through the academy. The final try of the game went to Louis Gorman, someone who seems to have impressed Willie Peters. I mean, he started out of position, or his usual position against Sheffield, started at fullback, and then he's come on against Leeds and scored a try after a fantastic Tyrone May offload. And you'd probably say, you know, him, along with, like you said, Fishwick and Tennyson, have put themselves forward as being options if needed. And just as we just started recording this little interview, Scott, I don't know if you saw, but Matty Staunton's been ruled out potentially for the next 6 weeks due to an elbow injury he'd sustained in that defeat to the Leeds Rhinos. So another player who I've been reading is supposed to impress in pre-season training. As a player, he'll be devastated because he'll want to hit the ground running. He wants to stake a claim for that starting jersey. Interestingly, there was only 2 times last season where he didn't come off the bench, where he actually started a game. Although he was, I think he played 24 games, and he has put himself forward as being one of the first choice forwards, I suppose, for the squad. It's going to be a big miss. What you would say is, there is still cover there, and it's just disappointing for the individual, I suppose, that he won't get to play for a good few weeks. Yeah,
of course it is. They'll be gutted, won't he, Matty? You know, he will be gutted that he can't play for that number of weeks. I wasn't aware of that, so you told me something new there. Maybe that does change the bench then, because without Matty Staunton and without Sam Luckley, you've lost two go forwards there. So maybe Tennyson or Fishwick might make the bench.
Certainly, or Corey Hall. No, then you look at Corey Hall. What's been happening there?
Yeah, you know, maybe he might go, if he wants to go strong on the bench with 3 forwards and and 𝗬𝗏𝗀𝗧, then it might open a space for Corey Hall, Leo Tennyson, and Zach Fishwick now. Because I think Stoughton and Luckley would certainly make the bench, wouldn't they, if they were fit? You know, so it maybe opens the door for one of the young lads to make an appearance in the derby.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the things that I did take away from the Leeds game is that we did look a bit beat up down the middle sometimes. You know, when we came up against a Leeds side that was, you know, when some of their big props came on, you know, we did seem to take a little bit of a backward step. And that is maybe one of the only concerns going into the new season is that we look like we've got a mobile pack. We've got a pack that will be able to play big minutes. Apart from Sue and maybe Sam Luckley, we don't necessarily have them big props who can really punch into the defence. But the game's changed as well, and there's lots of sides like that.
There are, but I said to my lad on Sunday, I still think we're missing that one meathead, that one Mossy Massoy, that Tony Pugliatua, you know, that big unit. But even if we're only going to do a couple of 10-minute spells, can batter a few holes in the opposition for you. We haven't got that sort of player. And yes, the game's changed and the game's much more mobile now, and it's about getting more minutes out your forwards and things like that. But I think sometimes you just need that absolute unit of a bloke just to try and get you out. When you're pinned into your 20 and you're trying to find a way out of it, you just need that big unit of a fella to try and just drag a few defending players that extra 3 or 4 yards with him. And I don't think we've got that. I think that's the only worry for me. I think we lack that unit of player. I'd like it just to have one, but I don't know who that is.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it, Scott? You know, especially at this stage of the season, I know the club are keeping money behind on the salary cap in the if we need to go out and get somebody, easier said than done though, isn't it? Because players are pretty much tied up now. There's not that many who are floating around who don't know what the future is with their side. So hey, let's see what happens. Hopefully it doesn't come to that and we end up we don't need to sign that player. But no, now we're going into that first game of the season, Scott. It's definitely whetting the appetite. I think they've sold 17,500 tickets. It's going to be the biggest opening crowd for Hull in terms of Super League. Such a shame that more Rovers fans won't be able to attend.
But it'd be 20,000 plus with us, wouldn't it? With our extra tickets, with the salt, there'd have been over 20,000 there, wouldn't it? You know, so
100%, and it's such a shame that there won't be more Robins fans there. Officially, I think unofficially there'll be quite a few.
I think if we score a try, you might see a few people go up in the Hull end, which could cause even more problems.
yeah, which would be the irony, wouldn't it? But no, all eyes on that first round game now, Scott. And just in general, what are your hopes for 2024? I mean, Willie Peters, he had a big first season. I've questioned whether the pressure's on him to deliver in 2024. The speak from the club is silverware is what will probably define Willie Peters' era, whether he's able to finally deliver, which has been such a barren spell, I suppose, for the club and the men's first team. What's your hopes as a supporter, Scott, as we go into the new season?
I think we have to improve on last year because that's the only way forward. If we stay stagnant or go backwards, I think it'll be seen as a negative. So for me, if you look at last season, the only game we didn't play in was the grand final. We played in every other game apart from the grand final. So the next step has to be winning a trophy. We have to win a trophy. We have to probably finish higher than fourth. If we can get second or third, that'll be a positive. It's another small step on the road to becoming that successful club that we all want. But I think the club are right. It's a piece of silverware. Until that piece of silverware comes, it won't be seen as a success. Certainly from the power board and everybody involved with the club. Now, if that's a Challenge Cup, that's fine. We'll take it all day long. But for me, there has to be a bit of silverware won, and we probably have to finish fourth again, if not second or third. We need to see small steps and small improvements. That's the only way it can be seen as a success in my eyes. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to a Challenge Cup victory, grand final victory, and then the World Club Challenge the following season.
All day long.
And it's funny to me.
And play the World Club Challenge in Australia, we'll all go there as well.
Well, I love that, 100%. You mentioned the grand final. It's been revealed that the Harry Sunderland Trophy, which is awarded to the man of the match in the grand final, is to be renamed the Rob Burrow Award, which is obviously fantastic recognition for someone who's won the trophy twice previously during his Leeds Rhinos days. So other players who have also achieved the honour of winning it twice are Kevin Sinfield, of course, great friend of Rob Burrow, and former Robin Danny Maguire. They're actually going to be presenting the trophy at this year's grand final. So we all hope, fingers crossed, that like you said, Hull Kingston Rovers can go that one step further and playing a game that we didn't play in last season, the only one that we couldn't play in because we didn't obviously get through the semi-final tie against Wigan. But it's all getting a bit exciting now, isn't it, Scott? And the build-up's definitely going to ramp up over the next 5, 6, 7 days as we go into that first game of the season.
It always will, especially when the first game's a derby. The banter's going to start flying, and all the stuff on like social media and what have you, and all the banter pages, there'll be stuff flying around. I don't know whether I agree that the derby opens the season. I don't know. I don't think anybody else seems to be playing a derby, do they? Apart from us. So Sky Sports always know when to use Hull when they need us. Put it that way. But yeah, it is what it is. We have to go there first game of the season. I don't particularly like playing Hull any time in the season, if I'm being honest. Even though we have got the better of them in more recent times, but. I don't really particularly enjoy derbies because I think it's the threat of that. If you lose, you just feel crap, don't you? If you win, you're euphoric, but it's that risk of losing and having to put up with them till Friday until we're playing again. But yeah, it is what it is. I'm looking forward to it. The Rovers fans will be there backing the lads. And if win, lose or draw, what you'll get from Rovers fans is 100% backing all the time.
Always great to hear from Scott on the Robin pod. Of course, disappointing news to hear that Matty Staunton is set to miss the first 6 weeks of this season due to an elbow injury sustained in that defeat to Leeds Rhinos in pre-season. There'll be, of course, a much bigger, better and more interesting preview of our encounter with Hull FC in that first game of the season next Thursday in next week's Robin pod. So make sure you tune in to that one. Let's hear now from Robin pod debutant Stacey Mowforth. Stacey, it's great to have you on the Robin pod. Former Hull Kingston Rovers women's side player, heritage number 19. Something you must be very proud of. One of the hosts of the Out of Her League podcast. Stacey, it's great to have you on the Robin pod to speak about your time with Hull Kingston Rovers and speak about women's rugby league in general, because I definitely feel that it's starting to ride a bit of a crest of a wave, and we're seeing an increase in participation in terms of grassroots rugby league with females, but also getting more and more exposure and more eyes on the women's game professionally, semi-professionally, internationally. So it's a great time for women's rugby league.
Yeah, definitely. I honestly think a lot. It's been building for a while, but the exposure of the Rugby League World Cup, that's just put more eyes on the game, and it has increased participation everywhere.
Yeah, and Stacey, former Hull Kingston Rovers player, how did that come about? Because I think you was a little bit late, wasn't you, coming into the game?
Yeah, well, I've played since I was 5. I'm 38 now, and I didn't fall out of love with the game, but I just got a bit lazy and it wasn't the priority. There weren't many teams in Hull. And my friend was joking with me for a few years before this Hull KR came up saying, why don't you get back into it? Why don't you get back into it? I was like, no, I'm too old now. But I said, I'll tell you what, if Hull KR ever do a women's team, I'll join them. And in 2019 they did. So I kind of had to put my money where my mouth is and play.
And that must have been a great experience, because obviously being a supporter of the club, watching the men's side for so many years, but to be able to pull on the shirt and represent the club and get a heritage number, you are part of history. Your name's down in the record books now, and you've played a part in the the development and the start of something really special for the Hull Kingston Rovers women's side, because I think originally there was part of the community trust, wasn't they? Now they've transitioned into being part of the part of the club, so they're under that one umbrella now.
Yeah, I've made no secret about it. It was a dream come true. I actually did a calendar news interview when I was 10 years old, saying it was my dream to play for Hull KR, and I put a tweet about on it before our first game, and Calendar picked it up again and did a follow-up. So it was like nearly 30 years later, I got to pull on the shirt, and it was crazy. Like, I think I cried every time I sat in the changing rooms. I got my first try on Park and I cried my eyes out. It was like I'd just won the World Cup or something. It was, to me, it meant something, and just being able to play on that pitch as well. And although we was part of the community trust, even back then, we always felt a part of the club, because there was not many people got to play on Craven Park apart from the men. And it was always a professional setup even back then in 2019. And it's just to see where it is now and how much it's evolved. It's crazy. But it's brilliant to see, and I think it's what Ben envisioned from starting this team. There was always a plan, and it was always so far it's gone along that plan and stuck to it, and it's coming into fruition now.
Yeah, and you're so right. Every time you pull on that Hull Kingston Rovers badge, that red and white, no matter what level you're playing at, whether it's the wheelchair, the netball side, the reserve grade, whatever, you are representing Hull Kingston Rovers, and now we're seeing more than ever, more and more girls who are stood in the East Stand, actually looking to you guys out on the pitch as role models, as something that they can aspire to. And there is more opportunity, more chance than ever to play rugby league. And I think for me, what's really refreshing is that these opportunities maybe weren't there previously, but they are there now. And anybody who wants to put their hand up and say, do you know what, I fancy taking up the game, especially young girls who will be the future of the game, they will be the lifeblood. There is an opportunity for them to take their place on the pitch, which unfortunately, Stacey, you probably didn't have when you was growing up. And for me, yeah, we're talking about, as well as the elite side, but now there's more chance and more opportunity, and almost the stigma is being removed. So if a young girl wants to go play rugby, the encouragement's there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I was first started playing, I kind of just got thrown into it by accident. I just got bored watching my brother play, so I joined in. And for a long time, I was the only girl in my team. And I think there was only 2 other girls in the league. And it was kind of a novelty. I mean, to be honest, I think it was a benefit me being the only girl, because I stood out more. I got to be the first girl to play for Hull schools, the first girl to get picked to play for Yorkshire, and it was still a boys' team. It was, but I was the only one. And I think how much we had to fight to not be allowed, but be accepted as rugby players. There's still some of it in the game now, the stigma attached to it, but not nearly as much as it was back then. And it's good to see how, say, young girls are encouraged to play now, not just a novelty. They're standout rugby players in their own right. These rugby fans that maybe don't watch the men's but go and watch the women. Yeah. And it's brilliant how much it's grown, and it's only going to grow further in the upcoming years.
Yeah, and I look at my lads' team. My eldest, he plays under 8s, and there's girls who play, of course, in mini rugby, and there's girls in his team, and nobody's treated any different. The boys, the girls, it is all as one, and the people, it's not a thing. And I think that's credit to the kids of today as well. That more accepting, and they're exposed to. Everyone should get the opportunity to play, and for me it's refreshing, but it's what it should be. It's not, that is how it should be. So thankfully we're in a position where we're getting to a point where there's equal opportunity to play. I think, like you said, the stigma maybe is still at the top end sometimes, when I get frustrated when I see on social media people criticising, say, a female commenting on a men's game, as if their opinion's not valid or not worth anything simply because they're a female. And I think there is still a bit of work to do in that space. But all I'd say is each season, people's opinions are changing, or these people have been made not to feel welcome at rugby because their views don't really fit in with what's expected, what's right.
Yeah, that's the thing as well. Opinions are changing, and it's not because I've seen quotes, "Oh, we're forced to watch women commentating." You're not forced to watch it. You know, they're on their own merit. They know the game. They've been around the game years. It's not just something they've picked up from watching. They're there. They're playing it. They're talking about what they know. It's not so much of a, oh, there's a woman presenting. It's like, oh, brilliant, there's a woman presenting.
Yeah.
No, it's good to see that change.
Yeah, and it is a big change, and there's a big change in terms of the competition structure in the elite end of women's rugby in this country. We've seen the women's and the wheelchair super leagues all come into the same branding, along with the men's league, which I think is really important because it puts on a united front, and also the competition structure underneath the women's super leagues changed. What can you tell us about that, Stacey?
Well, they've shortened, well, not shortened, but they've condensed the Women's Super League into 8 players now, and they've brought 2 teams down. It's Bradford Bulls and Castleford, who probably they wouldn't admit it themselves. They were out of the depth in that. But that would mean like the new tier for Hull KR, the Northern Championship, it's going to be more competitive. You've got Bradford Bulls, it's Castleford, Dewsbury, Sheffield Eagles, and Lee Leopards as well. They're all just below that Super League standard. I think Hull KR, obviously last year, because of how they were doing the leagues this year, we were unlucky to get promotion. But I think they'll take it as a learning curve. It's one of those where they know they're not quite ready yet for Super League, but another season developing and bringing all them players together, because they've got a lot of younger players there that have had to learn really quick. And I think the way they've done it, it's more competitive. You've got the North, the South, who will come together at the end of the season, and like champion of the North, champion of the South will play against each other. So that it just brings a different. I think although last season they didn't get promoted, there was still that fight to stay where there was. But I think this year they'll be more hungry for it because they have got that chance to get in the Super League at the end of the season. So I just think it'll be a different season, not just for Hull KR, but for everybody, because there's that light at the end of the tunnel that you win this, you're going to be promoted to the Super League, playing against some of the best female players in the world, in the country.
And I think that's what's exciting, Stacey, especially from Hull Kingston Rovers' perspective, that potentially, you never know, 2025, Hull Kingston Rovers could have a women's Super League team. Like you said, the Northern and Southern, the winners of their divisions face off against each other, and then they play. I think is it that they play the bottom team of the women's Super League, and then the winner. I'm guessing they have to meet off-field criteria as well. But the winner could be in Super League next season. So it's a massive carrot to dangle, and you're probably right in terms of they didn't achieve promotion in terms of being promoted, but obviously they was very successful on the pitch. But actually, they could have maybe just done with this one more season, this opportunity to grow. And of course, they'll be facing Super League sides in the Challenge Cup because the group stage, aren't they, in the area?
They've got Huddersfield on the 16th, and that's away, and they've got Leeds Rhinos at home, and I think that's round 2 or group stage 3. But they've got Leeds Rhinos at home, and I think if you look at the score against York last year, I honestly think they'll narrow that against Leeds. So I think they kind of know where they've got to aim for, and they've already played a Super League team now. So hopefully it'll give them a good marker to where they're at.
Yeah, and I suppose, Stacey, one of the biggest gaps that needs bridging at the moment is the funding with clubs. So although we're progressing, we're moving forward, there's more recognition, there's more investment going into the teams, there is still a disparity probably. So there's some, if you look at the St Helens of Women's Super League, for example, and York, and there's big investment going into there. Obviously, we need to now hopefully get other clubs matching that investment, because that is only going to drive the standards. It's going to make it a career for a lot of girls and women who are playing the game, which is ultimately, I think, where we need to get to, because we've seen players go over to the NRL down under to earn a living, and we want to be able to offer them opportunities over here in England. We want to do it for more players. So it is a challenge, though, isn't it? Because the level of investment is often dictated by sponsors, TV deals and stuff. But fingers crossed, Stacey, we are getting to a point where more money is coming into the game, which can only be a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's like I said before, it's snowballed from the World Cup. It's got more eyes on it, which has led to more girls playing, which has led to certain teams being able to offer them contracts to players and giving them a payment. There's a lot more clubs that are not paying their players as such, but can offer them things like mileage expenses and stuff like that. And it's all the same. They've got to get eyes on the game for people to want to come in, because you're not going to come in and sponsor something that you're not going to be seen on. So it's all about pushing that exposure, which could be a slow process, but once they get that exposure, you're going to get more people investing in the sport and more eyes on it.
Definitely. And I know there's a lot of people who look forward to seeing the women's side, especially playing on Craven Park. Sometimes, I think last season they did a couple of double headers where they linked in, and you know, it brings people into Craven Park. So hopefully we're going to see more of them out on the pitch there. What are your predictions for the Robins in 2024?
I'd like to see them do the treble again. I honestly think they'll be the top for push for promotion. I think they'll definitely be in that final game for promotion, and the red, white in me, definitely promotion, but they'll definitely be up there. They've got the talent across the team is too good for them to be anywhere but that fight for promotion.
Yeah, and I suppose as well a special mention for Ben Parker, who's pushed so hard at the club to follow women's game and doing a great job as head coach. And obviously he seems to have dragged people along with him as well to get the women's side, along with a few others as well, but to get them into the point and position where they are now.
Yeah, I will never stop singing the praises of Ben Parker. Never, ever. For one, he made my dream happen, and I will forever be thankful for that. But for what he's done for the women, I mean, he postponed his honeymoon to make sure he was there for the final, and the work he does behind the scenes. He's a man of few words, but the words he says have an impact, and they just make people invest in him and what he does, and say what he's done for that team. I'm getting a bit emotional now, but I'll never stop singing his praises. He don't get as much credit as he should.
Yeah, and I tell you what, there's not many men who could get away with postponing the honeymoons for another woman or other women. So he's done well there. But no, you are right. He deserves a huge amount of praise. And let's who knows where this will end up? Who knows where it could end up? You know, the opportunities there. If we cast our eyes over to the men's first team, I mean, the first game of the season's not that far away now. Take on our bitter rivals on the 15th of February. What are your expectations for them this season, Stacey?
I think if they carry on with the momentum that they had last season, they've recruited well. I mean, I don't take notice of friendlies really. They're here or there, really, are they? But I think seeing a couple of interesting link-ups and a couple of players already shining, I think top four. Four easily. If they can keep the head on all the way through, complete a full 80 minutes, and the dreaded injuries that we're always seem to be plagued with, I think we've got a good chance top four.
Yeah, I think there's a real opportunity there, and it's interesting. Some of the conversations I've been having with people is whether we need to be maybe a bit more realistic in terms of our expectations around the team. Should the top six be okay and maybe a decent cup run? But I suppose Willie Peters' first season as head coach has raised them expectations, and we haven't had these high hopes for a long time. Often the Robins have found themselves in relegation battles. We've been worried whether they're going to stay in the league rather than are they going to be challenging for a cup or a playoff spot. So I suppose I don't necessarily think us as supporters having high hopes is a bad thing, especially when you can see and hear how high Willie Peters' hopes of the side as well. And of course, with a new board, the developments off the pitch, you know, it is a club going places. I'm just desperate for it to end in silverware at some point very soon, because it just feels such a long, long way.
Yeah, it's not easy being a Hull KR supporter, is it? There's definitely been many highs and lows for the years. Yeah. I think a couple of years ago, I think I've said it myself, as long as we get that top 8 and as long as we still up. But I think, like you said, last season has raised expectations. There's a new injection, there's a new buzz about the club on and off the field, like you say. But it's just whether my main concern is injuries and if we've got enough cover in certain areas. But what will be, will be.
And I guess that's the same for every other Super League team. I mean, you want your best players out there for as long as possible. And there's no doubt when you put Rovers first 13 down on paper, you know, it's a very, very strong squad, a very strong side. For me, up there, at least, you know, like you said, in the top 4, I think, in terms of 1 to 13, let's hope we can keep them out on the pitch for as long as possible. Stacey, you're a very busy person. I'm fortunate to get you on the podcast because, as well as doing everything else that you are doing, you're also the joint host. Would that be fair to say, of the Out of Her League podcast? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, well, me and my friend, we decided that women's rugby league at all levels needed putting out there, so we created a couple of social media pages sharing everything. And I thought, why don't we get some players on, do our own podcast, see who wants to listen and get to know players. It's not like I don't know if you listen to it, it's not like this is what's happening in your club. It's like, tell us about you. Who are you? How did you get into rugby? And we've had some quite good, well, they've all been good guests, but some that have provided real insight to younger players growing up. So we on YouTube and Spotify with that Out of Her League podcast, anything about women's rugby league. It is literally anything and everything about women's rugby league.
Yeah, and your co-host Bri, many people will be familiar to him on the Robin Pod. He's featured a few times, and someone who's just so passionate, like yourself, Stacey, about rugby league and genuinely just wants the best for rugby league and wants to shine a light on it. So the exposure you guys are giving to the women's game is fantastic. And I think, did you speak to Carla Nolan from?
I was just one of those things where once a Robin, always a Robin. I was like, oh my God, I'm talking to like a Hull KR player, even though I've played rugby before. But yeah, it was definitely a fangirl moment again. I played on the pitch with her, but yeah, she was good and an absolute warrior on and off the pitch. I don't know how she does it.
Yeah, and just remind us again, Stacey, where can we find the Out of Her League podcast?
On YouTube and Spotify, both at Out of Her League.
Great to hear from Stacey. What a fantastic guest, and we can look forward to hearing more from Stacey as the women's season progresses. So, going to be another fantastic guest. That's it for this edition of the Robin Pod Weekly. Tune in next week for all the latest Derby Day news, including our thoughts where the game could be won and lost for Hull Kingston Rovers. This is, of course, powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre, the only car specialist trusted by players, officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. But for now, live, love, laugh and be happy.